Welcome to a community update from the Department of Senior Affairs. I'm your host, Ed Nunez. Today's show topic is elder mediation. The title is How Mediation Can Assist Seniors and Adult Children and Friends Resolve Many Difficult Decisions. And with us to discuss that is Wallace Ford, who's the coordinator of the New Mexico Elder Mediation Network. Wallace, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good to have you.
Thank you.
You know, we talked about this a lot, and mediation can resolve a lot of different things in a lot of different areas. And I don't know that people, again, this is a show revolves around senior issues and senior affairs. I don't know that a lot of elderly, seniors would say that they know about mediation for seniors, and I think it's an important topic.
It really is, Ed, because the idea of having somebody come in and help you with your difficult conversation with your children or with your parent or anything like that is not something that is widely popular. Mediation is growing in popularity and certainly is used quite a bit in, say, the court system. For example, the Metro Court here uses mediators to help resolve conflicts. But in the elder population, it's not too widely used yet, but that's why we created this network, is to try to provide information about elder mediation and, more importantly, to provide the service.
We have a list of questions that we want to get to, and Wallace, the first question is, what is the goal of elder mediation?
Well, the goal of elder mediation basically is to help elders and their adult siblings or elders with their friends move through difficult conversations. Those conversations can be about what their future plan is, what they might need, and because, as I said earlier, that people are not really experienced in working through these difficult conversations, providing a third party who is neutral and can work with the best interests of all the parties around the table can move the conversation to a more productive level.
Wallace, you know what? We talked about this before we got on, about difficult decisions. You want to explain a little bit about what you mean? Because, some of the things you said about hitting 65, for instance, before we got on, really, I'm 51 now. It seems like that'll be here before you know it, because time just seems to go so quick. Can you explain a little bit about difficult decisions? Because I thought you were just so on point with some of the things you said. I hadn't even thought about it.
Well, one of the things I think we're discovering because of the increasing number of seniors is that there are specific age-related concerns and challenges that seniors have, and by and large, that has been ignored in the population. The assumption is that, when you reach your middle age, you work through a lot of issues, and then you can coast the rest of your life, and that's not the case. When you cross that threshold, say 65, 70, you're facing a lot of new issues that in previous generations there just weren't that many people who were going through that. But now, with the demographics changing and increasing number of seniors, we're learning that seniors face a number of challenges or dilemmas. One way we have of talking about that is there are significant losses that keep occurring in a senior's life if they live to be, 75, 85, 90. There's a loss of health. There's a loss of peers, The obituary page becomes one of your favorite pages to look at it when you get the morning paper, because who are my friends that have passed over? There's a loss of financial securities. There's a loss of vocational purpose. There's the loss of not only friends, but also where do I go from here? A disorientation. So over and over and over again, seniors are facing these kind of losses. And so the struggle is, how do I retain control? How do I maintain when I'm experiencing these losses? And who do I talk to about what that means for me? And that's where mediation can be helpful to provide a bridge of communication between the elder with their friends, what they're going through, a bridge between the elder and the elder's adult siblings or other people who are concerned about the elder's health.
You know, you put things in perspective so well, and I think one of the things that we need to remember, whether it be our own mothers, grandmothers, relatives, in my case, people that I work with every day, there could be reasons why, you know, people talk about cranky seniors, and some of that's true, but there's also, you mentioned isolation, financial, health, obituary, you know, your peers, loss of your independence.
Right.
There's many different reasons. You know, again, and people are living longer anyway, so you're going to see more of this. You know, people are living into their 90s. People are living in, you know, late and healthy, living
Right.
good lives. But you mentioned those things, and they're all true. And so I think some of the things that people need to remember is just have patience.
Yeah.
We all might get there someday. You know, that's the goal anyway. So remember those things when you can run up against what you think is a, you know, belligerent. You know, use the tools in your tool bag to deal with that.
Yeah. For example, one mediation I was doing recently, the daughter was complaining about how her mother just kept telling the same stories over and over again. And one of the things that she came to realize as a course of the mediation was that someone your age, Ed, can look forward to solving your problems and dealing with you. But look, where do I go from here? You know, the horizon of your life is really out there. You've got, 40, 50 years yet. But when that horizon moves back, where do you look for trying to make sense out of life? How do you do that? And that's why seniors will oftentimes start telling stories of the past, because it's not just that they're forgetting that they told you the story before and before and before. What they're really doing when they're telling that story is, I want to know what I learned there that I can apply to who I am right now.
So interesting and so true. Remember that. That's such, of course I hear that all the time.
I'm sure
in
you
the
do.
business that I'm in, but you know what? My thing is I act like I just heard it yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to say anything about that. You're right. I have, a number of stories that are told to me, and that's okay. It's still great the 10th time I heard it.
Yeah.
Still great.
Yeah.
You know, Wallace, great information there. What are the benefits of elder mediation? I think you hit on a few, but what are the, again, you mentioned a couple of stories, but what are the benefits of elder mediation?
Well, if it's possible to have a productive conversation in the midst of a conflict of values or a conflict of expectations between an elder, say, and their adult siblings, if they can work that through, then new alternatives begin to emerge. For example, if a daughter basically saying, we've got to find a place for mom. We've got to find a place for her. She just can't take care of herself anymore. Usually that decision is oftentimes made apart from who mom is. And then you get into intensifying the disagreement or even the conflict if there is not an opportunity for the daughter and mom to talk through what is in the best interest of the elder, and trusting that in that conversation they can discover it. If they don't have that conversation, if they don't reach some kind of mutually satisfying agreement where both the daughter's interests and the mom's interests are taken care of, it will eventually, it could have, continued to disrupt the family relationship, but it also could mean that the daughter turns to some kind of litigation or judicial decision that begins to deprive mom of her capacity to make decisions. So the benefit is that before that reaches that point, or even of the point of having to go into some kind of judicial decision, if the family can work through that, then they have an opportunity to come out feeling better about themselves, their relationship, than what happens when you get into the adversarial mode of, show up in court.
You know what? That's, again, an important point, having a neutral party in there, because sometimes things cannot be resolved amicably, and sometimes a neutral party can make suggestions and have them come to that agreement before they get to litigation, lawyers swallowing up whatever money's left anyway. So, yeah, it's an important thing, because, you see that a lot.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, people can't, solve things. They want to get lawyers and sue, and what is ever settled? Again, things are eventually settled out of court or whatever. At what cost?
Yeah.
And to the family, to the financial, pocketbook. So you're saying there that, again, you're available to, to help resolve some of those issues.
And it's not to say that guardianship is not an important option for people, but there may be some options before guardianship needs to take place, and we certainly wouldn't deny that. Some people reach a stage of being incompetent to handle their financial affairs or even their living affairs, but if you have that conversation, and especially with the help of a neutral third party, it may be possible to discover solutions that don't have to go through guardianship. Or if you do go through guardianship, you do it because everybody agrees this is what needs to happen. But the financial issue has got to be taken into consideration. If you're going to go to guardianship, you just count on $5,000 first. It's going to cost $5,000, and it can go up into six figures.
Yes. So again, that's a very important benefit there. Wallace, great information again. What is the New Mexico Elder Mediation Network? What is that?
Well, out of conversation with other mediators, experienced mediators, we begin to think about what are the areas in our community where mediation is not being necessarily provided, and what we need to do, both education about mediation and offer the services. So out of that conversation, there emerged about 15 of us that said, okay, we're going to create a network. And it's not a corporation, it's not a nonprofit service or anything like that. Basically, we're committed to providing this service. So we have a wide range of experience among the 15 mediators. All of us are experienced, some of us having 20, 25 years of mediation experience. We have social workers who are on the team as mediators. We have a geriatric doctor who's on the team as a mediator, and others who have been involved in a variety of mediation, land use, family matters, and things like that. So, and we get together once a month to do training and updates because we feel like we got to keep our skills up, and we feel a responsibility to offer these services in a responsible way.
It's quite a team you have assembled there. I guess you have your own dream team there.
Yeah, we sure do.
From different walks of life, and everybody comes in and adds their own expertise and opinions. Boy, how important is that, Wallace? I mean, just having the people that you just mentioned on that panel or team that you call it. How important is that?
It's really very important because we have so many different perspectives. We have, as I said, some people who have come, who are on the team coming out of social work, especially social work with seniors. And we have people who have dealt with high conflict situations. One of the mediators and myself, we worked with the post office back in the time when, the post office was getting such a reputation of, very oftentimes lethal conflict. Right. And others of us have had court experience. Some of us have had, land use, divorce, custodial experience. So when we're together and we're talking about, cases, and we do that in a confidential way because all mediation is confidential. Nothing leaves the room in a mediation unless there's agreement about what that happened, what was the result. But we still feel important to keep our skills honed working in the field of seniors because what we've discovered, even though most of us are seniors, that we haven't really attended to the unique characteristic of what a senior is experiencing. Just like when I was doing mediation with the juvenile program here in town, I needed to know what is the world of the juvenile, especially the juvenile delinquent. What's going on in that person's life that can benefit from some kind of restorative action that helps them get into a new way of life. So those are the things that we believe are important for us to talk about on a regular basis as a way of continuing to hone our skills.
Another thing I think is important, too, is there's a certain comments about you, Wallace. I'm sure the other people that, the land use, and there has to be a sense of calmness if you're going to be mediating a potentially not volatile situation, but, one that has some passion about it. Someone's got to remain calm.
That's right.
So
that's what the mediator can do.
I sense that from you right away. Wallace, gosh, again, great answers there, and I'm certainly learning a lot. I hope everybody else is. Is elder mediation for us? Is it for us? Now, I don't,
Well, it's hard to describe if it's right for us. That's why if someone were to be in touch with us, and they can get in touch with us through the webpage, we will have an initial interview or intake with those persons or the person who makes the contact to find out what's going on. And we will try in that, and it's free, the first interview is free. We will try to assess whether or not mediation is appropriate. We know there's some situations where it's not, where, because of the complexity of the relationships, it may be important that an attorney be involved, and certainly, they have their role in that. But we make that determination up front, and based on previous experience, we can kind of assess, we can work with this, or at least work with it partially. There may be other people that need to be involved at different points along the way. And then from that point on, we would establish a first session involving as many of the people in the conflict or in the conflictive situation as possible, and get started with it.
Okay, that's some great information there. Again, the other question people are going to have, and I know it's one that I thought of when I called you to ask you to be on, physically, the location, where does mediation take place?
It can take place anywhere where there's some privacy. I know that some of the senior centers have smaller rooms that we could use if the senior or the family felt comfortable using that facility. They've been coming there for meals and other events. We could have it at the senior center. Some of our mediators have office space. I myself prefer to have it in the home, because when I'm in the home, I have a sense of who these people are. How a person organizes their living room, and what they put into their living room tells a great deal about that person. And it's a helpful background for me as a mediator to have a sense of this is where they live their lives, and this is what's going on. We have also access to rooms in churches or faith communities if people would feel comfortable, going to those. So it can take place almost anywhere, as long as the privacy of the conversation can be protected.
What are the most common places that percentage-wise? Is it more the homes, churches, or what's the most? The thing you said about the homes. That makes sense to me. A lot of people may not want them to take place there, but I would want to get a feel personally myself as well. But what's the most percentage where people want to meet?
I wish I could give that to you, Ed, but we're so new, and we're just in the process of making people aware of the network that I wouldn't say we had that many cases per se.
Mm-hmm.
My own preference, and I'll just speak for my own preference, is, as I said, is in the home, and so the mediations that I've had have been almost entirely in the home, although I did one in a church too.
I see. I think the other thing too is, Wallace, the other question people are going to have, and we talked about the location of mediation, but how long will this take? And I'm guessing it could take, 2, 3, I don't know that there's an answer. That might be 3, 4 sessions. I'll let you answer that.
Again, it depends on the complexity of the relationship. It depends on the willingness of the parties to try to work together and finding common solutions. There are some instances where after the first session, some research needs to be done, or say an alternative housing locations need to be explored, and then can come back and have a second session about the decisions about moving into that, or making the application. The typical mediation session itself is up to about 2 to 3 hours. I find personally that anything longer than that is not productive. But how many sessions really depends on the context of the conflict.
I see. And I'm gathering, again, the mediator's job. I'm sure that one party's on one side, one's on the other. You're probably in the middle, I'm guessing, if that's the way the meeting is set up. And your job is probably just to come, write solutions, write the problems, things like that. Am I correct in that?
That's good. That's very close, Ed. But in many instances, it's going to be more than just one and two. It could be, if, for example, if there are 3 siblings and an adult. That means there are 4 people around the table. So what we have to do is take time to let each person express where they are and what they believe is going to be in the best interest to move forward. And at the same time, probably to deal with some past mistakes in the decision making that the family has made. They might say, for example, you remember when you did this, or you remember when you said that. And so we have to, even though we can't correct those past moments, we have to at least allow them to come out so that the emotional tenor that's being carried inside has an opportunity for expression. In essence, it's taking time with each person to really help them identify what they believe is in the best interest to move forward. The adult child may have as her or his best interest not just concern about their mother or their dad, but also what financially is it going to mean? Where are we in all of this? So it's not easy. It's not an easy fix by any means, but a mediator can stay there and work with it and keep acknowledging what's going on.
And I think that's the important thing about mediation in anything, whether it be elder. That's the thing is keep it going on the right track if that's possible. Because again, some of these things, and we'll get to this question next. What happens if we don't resolve our conflict? What happens then?
Let me just use as an illustration, and this is not a real case, but suppose daughter Mary has decided that her father is no longer capable of handling his financial affairs and needs to be placed in either a guardianship and or a more controlled environment. The father has had remarriage, and so there's a daughter and a stepmother and the father. If the daughter begins to insist something's got to be done, we've got to have some way to handle dad's affairs, and obviously it's too much for you, and we need to move forward, and it can end up in a guardianship. The alternative would be if taking time to meet with the daughter, and maybe there's other siblings, taking time to meet with the daughter, the stepmother, and the person to look at this. It may give, for example, the stepmother an opportunity to express her concerns, which she's kept hidden. It may give the daughter an opportunity to say, here's what I'm observing. Now, is there anything we should be doing about what I'm observing, not what I think should happen? And that's one of the things that really goes on in a mediation, is helping people move away from evaluating and judging into, here's what I'm observing, how should we be dealing with this together?
Questions and answers together, because I think you're absolutely right about that. Everybody has their own perspective, and sometimes, let's be honest, it's for selfish reasons. It could be financially. It could be a lot of, in other words, where do I stand? What am I going to get? And let's be honest, those things happen.
Yeah.
That's why your network exists.
Yeah.
So, boy, that's an important tool, I would think, because sometimes it makes people stop and think, well, gosh, I didn't think of that. They brought that up. I didn't even think of that. And maybe they're right, and maybe I can think different.
Yeah, and part of that thinking different is looking at a broader range of possibilities. For example, if an adult sibling flies in from Chicago and looks around one day and tells his sister, okay, it's time for us to take away Dad's keys. You know, he's not safe anymore. It's clear to me that he doesn't have the competency to continue driving. And if that were brought into mediation, because it's a part of a larger issue, we could begin by asking, even though he's from out of town, what has he observed about his father's driving capacity? And in all likelihood, it's more a judgment about his general competency rather than what he's observed. And I know I went through that with my mother when she was about 87. You know, there were things that I observed about watching her drive that began to worry me. So I would go out with her on almost on the pretext of saying, let's go for a drive, and just see how she handled traffic. You know, she lived out in the north part of town, so she would have to drive onto I-25, and it became clear to me that her reaction time and her capacities were really dropping. And I just said, you know, this is what I'm observing, Mom. Is that something you see? And after 2 conversations, she said, I think it's ready for me to give up my keys. We'll figure out another way for me to get around. I mean, it was a difficult decision. I mean, independence driving is important.
But I think, you know, the funny thing was, or you made it on her. You know, what are you seeing? And instead of saying, give me the keys, you're done, it's a better way to say, hey, you know, this is what I've observed. What do you think?
Exactly.
Buy in. She's vested in too, and that's important because a lot of kids, like you said, will fly in and say, okay, that's it, you're done. And the person that's driven for 80 years is, you know, whatever, is like, doesn't know, you know, wait a minute, you're taking away my independence.
Exactly.
Different way to do things. So I like your way, Wallace. Anyway, you know, Wallace, we've got 3 minutes left, and you know, the other thing is we've got about 2 questions. I want to get to that along with your website. What are possible outcomes with mediation?
Well, the greatest possible outcome of mediation is that when you have 2, 3, 4 people working on a common concern in a mediation, there are oftentimes alternatives that begin to emerge that they hadn't thought about, or alternatives begin to emerge that they can kind of say, oh, okay, I can take this piece. I can do the search for a home for Mom, or I can take this piece. I'll go with her to the doctor to see, you know, just her capacity, whatever that may be. So there's a lot of creative alternatives that emerge, plus the fact that in general, no matter how old you are, when people are able to move through conflict to a new place, there's a better feeling about each other. And that, I think, is as much a gift of mediation as anything else. You know, we feel good now. It's good to feel good about being a family.
Well, yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. There's still a lot of jumbled feelings about families sometimes, and for whatever reasons, you know, the grudges. You know, I mentioned the Everly brothers before we got on. They were estranged until and it's sad. It was sad to me when I read that.
Yeah.
And it happens.
It does.
But you know, at the end of the day, who do you have? You know, you have your family, and do you really want to feel like that? And you're right. It feels good to feel good about your family.
And your best friend, or you know, someone that you have been a friend with for 50 years. You know, then, you know, it's good to have that friendship back.
Boy, no kidding. Sometimes, as you said to me this before we went on. You told me this, that sometimes people can't resolve their issues. They just don't know how. They don't know what to.
Right.
Their regrets that they've had in life, Wallace. And let's be honest, we all have them.
Exactly.
You know, Wallace, the last question we have for you is, what if I need legal advice? That's the last question we have.
Well, we do not provide legal advice, and we do recommend places like the Senior Law Center and even some of the attorneys who are specialized in elder law. You know, we're not in the legal profession, but we have a role to play. And if somebody needs, say, some legal advice about conservatorship or guardianship or something like that, we really encourage them to contact, especially the Senior Law Center. But apart from the legal advice, what we can provide is relational advice or relational connections.
Great. 30 seconds left. Give us the website and how they can, give us the contact information website if you could.
The website is very simple. It's nmelder.org. nmelder.org. You go on that site. There's a roster of the 15 mediators giving their individual background. It tells you how to contact us. It tells us what to expect and what to expect when they get a call from one of the mediators. And as soon as we get that note from you saying we'd like to talk, we'll refer a mediator to you right away.
Wallace Ford, coordinator for the New Mexico Elder Mediation Network. Thanks so much for being our guest, sir.
Well, thank you, Ed, for inviting me.
You bet. For the Department of Senior Affairs, I'm Ed Nunez.